Today is a mighty splendid day.
It sure is.
According to my calculations, the UV must be 10 right now.
That means we'll be nice and golden brown like a bucket full of fried chicken before the end of the day. Oh my gosh, look, it's Mimo.
We should go run to her house.
Theoretically, taking something with wheels would be like 0.2 seconds faster.
Oh, shut up, Will.
How about now?
I actually got here 2 seconds faster, you guys.
Hello, children.
Hey, Gmo.
Hey, Grams.
Ni hao, grandmother.
Come on, sit down. Come on, right here.
How was your expedition, Grandma?
Yeah, how was it?
It was brilliant. I learned all these new facts about China.
Well, can you tell us everything you learned?
Everything you learned.
Will, please. She doesn't have time for all of that.
It's okay, guys. Here's some cookies. China is a wonderful place. I learned so much about its physical geography.
How was its physical geography like, Mimo?
Well, the physical geography was terrific. It includes mountains, high plateaus, sandy deserts, and dense forests. Did you know that China is actually 1/3 mountains? Whoa! China consists of thousands of rivers, including the Yangtze, the Yellow, and Amur River. In the eastern plains and the southern coasts, it consists of fertile lowlands and foothills. The spatial distribution of China is 96% of the Chinese population in the eastern half, and 4% in the northwest, the southwest, and the northern frontiers.
Grandma, why is most of the population in eastern China?
Eastern half of China is where all the big cities are and the most livable areas are, while in the northwestern half is where all the deserts, the forests, and all of like the unlivable and non-arable land.
What are the spatial perspectives of China?
China is located in Southeast Asia, and its coast is lined by the Pacific Ocean. China is the third largest country in mass behind Russia and Canada. The area of China is about 9.6 million kilometers, and its coast is about 18,000 kilometers. China became overpopulated after World War II when Chinese families were encouraged to have more children in order to get more money, have a better army, and produce more food.
Is that why China has the one-kid rule?
China created the one-child policy in order to slow down population growth.
What is the capital of China and what are its regions like?
The capital of China is Beijing, and China is split into 23 provinces, 5 autonomous regions, 4 municipalities, and 2 special administrative regions.
Why are Hong Kong and Macau special administrative regions?
Hong Kong was not always owned by China. The British had control of it for 156 years. Macau was owned by the Portuguese until 1999. The reason they're both special administrative regions is because they both have their own economy system and they have their own way of operating the country.
What are some popular things China created and are still being used today?
Paper making, printing, gunpowder, and compass were all 4 great inventions created by China. China was the first to invent paper.
That's amazing, Grandma. I didn't know any of this.
China is a very exciting place. Would you like me to talk about migration or population first?
Thanks, Grandma, for telling us about the geography of China. But what about the population of China?
Actually, I did a report on the population of China not too long ago. I can show it to you guys. Just like this.
Population density in China is 153 people per square kilometer. China's total arable land amounted to almost 1.28 million square kilometers by the end of 2019, down nearly 6% compared with a decade earlier. The population density of China in 2022 was 149 people per square kilometer, a 0% increase from 2021. The population density of China in 2021 was a 0.07% increase from 2020. The researchers concluded that the region is able to support 1.66 billion people. China's physiological population density is also about 3,521 people per square mile. The natural increase of China is at negative 0.161% in 2022. The crude birth rate in China is 1.705. The birth rate for China in 2022 was 10.902 births per 1,000 people. The death rate in China in 2022 was 7.37 deaths per 1,000 people. In 2021, China's population grew by the slowest increase on record. The mainland China population, excluding foreigners, rose by 480,000 to 1.14 billion people at the end of 2020. In the 40s, most pro-analysis policies in China tried to ease the financial strain on parents. Some cities offer cash. One in Gansu province promised to give parents 10,000 yuan a year for 3 years if they had a third child, and half that for the second. China is in stage 4 of the epidemic and demographic transition. Chinese immigrants first arrived in the United States in the 1850s, eager to escape the economic turmoil in China and to try their luck at the California gold rush. When the gold rush ended, Chinese Americans were considered cheap labor. The Gobi Desert in the north and the Taklamakan Desert in the west helped protect China from outside forces, but they also limited Chinese expansion. The top 3 countries of origin for foreign residents in China were Korea, Japan, and the United States.
Thank you for watching. That took me 180 minutes to finish. What the heck, guys? Wake up!
What did I miss?
That's very mean.
Nothing could have been more boring than that. Anyways, what was the culture like in China?
Well...
In China, the largest ethnic group is the Han Chinese. The Han practice a Chinese folk religion called Confucianism. There are many fascinating practices in Confucianism, such as fortune-telling, ancestor worship, and feng shui watching.
But Jima, what is feng shui?
Well, feng shui is the practice of harmonizing yourself and your home with the environment around you. The words feng and shui directly translate to wind and water, and the term is inspired by an ancient poem that states that humans are directly connected to their surroundings. Feng shui is greatly reflected in Chinese architecture and home design. You can even feng shui your own home. Another very important practice in Chinese culture is art. There are many forms of Chinese art. Some include calligraphy, jade sculptures, performing arts, and paintings. Every piece of Chinese art has great meaning. For example, paintings reflect nature and unity. Calligraphy, one of the most important forms of art in Chinese culture, represents the importance of the world. China is one of the most ancient civilizations in the world. They have many ancient practices that are still performed today.
Did you participate in any ancient practices?
Well, I did go to a couple festivals. In China, festivals usually fall into 3 categories: agricultural, religious, and social. One social festival I went to was the Chinese New Year festival. At Chinese New Year, it is traditional to give your family red envelopes filled with money. It is also typical to watch dragon dances and fireworks. The festival was lots of fun.
Where did all this culture start?
Well, it is said that Confucianism started with the Huxia tribe in the Huanghe River Valley. From there, it spread all throughout China. Today, Confucianism is practiced everywhere, including different countries. The Silk Road played a big role in the diffusion of Chinese culture. Language also spread through relocation diffusion, mostly to other Southeast Asian countries. Today, many Chinese characters are used in different Southeast Asian languages.
Wow, Chinese sure does sound like an interesting language.
Indeed. Chinese is one of the oldest written languages in the world, at more than 3,000 years old. There are 10 different dialects of Chinese, with Mandarin being the most popular, especially amongst the Han Chinese. Chinese belongs to the Sino-Tibetan language family. Today, it is spread all over the world, and is the second most spoken language.
Chinese culture sure sounds amazing. Are there any other cultures in China?
Yes, but it is not typical to practice other cultures in China. The Chinese government has put a great amount of effort into suppressing other indigenous cultures and languages. In many schools, especially in smaller villages, the Chinese government has banned the use of indigenous languages, and the children are taught Mandarin instead. China is also not very open to outsiders. China is a homogeneous state, and foreigners are frowned upon, especially people of African descent. During the COVID-19 pandemic, racism towards black people spiked. The Chinese government had no problem with the fact that blackface was being portrayed in their media, and during the height of the pandemic, black people living in China were subjected to mandatory COVID tests and were forced to isolate themselves for many weeks.
Well, no country is perfect. Hopefully this problem is fixed soon.
Agreed. What was the government like in China?
Yes, let me tell you all about it.
As we were discussing language, China is primarily one language, Mandarin, as well as a socialist democracy. Because of its overall size and diversity, I believe China would not be a nation state, and for the same reason, it is not a nation. As a result, China is considered a state. Transitioning to government, China is an authoritarian type of government. Oop, same government, wrong country. That's better. China is one of the least democratic countries in the world. Authoritarian governments have most of their power in the central government and delegate enforcement power to regional governments, while also encouraging complete obedience to the government's authority. A benefit of this type of government is that it can make and apply laws quickly, and if a government-issued building is being built, it will be completed in a matter of weeks rather than months. One disadvantage of an authoritarian government is that they are almost tyrannical and often result in rebellion. Since we're on the subject, China's geopolitics are fascinating. As of 2022, China and the United States are on somewhat good terms, so there will be no unexpected fights or wars for which we will have to be drafted. China has officially become a global economic power and will have an impact on the rest of the world. China is beginning to abandon the US dollar. Their currency, however, has no impact on global trade transactions, so the switch will be pointless for them. There are a bunch of boundaries in China, but one we all know is the Great Wall. This wall has been used as a famous tourist attraction for almost 200 years. It is one of, if not the most famous relic boundaries in the world. China recently had territorial disputes with Japan over islands, but I believe Japan already has enough islands. China has also experienced colonialism. China had colonial outposts in Vietnam, Korea, and Taiwan. Surprisingly, the Korean and Vietnamese colonies were mostly for territory rather than resources, as the reason for colonizing Vietnam was to control the Red River Delta, which was a major trading hub for large countries like India and the Roman Empire. China has both centripetal and centrifugal forces. While centripetal forces are limited, there has been continuous improvements on the environment in recent years, as well as its recent opening to the visitors and the like. Centrifugal forces are their trade restrictions, social divisions, and actions as a quote-unquote communist country. Surprisingly, with their, again, quote-unquote communist actions, they are one of the founding members of the United Nations and are a part of the World Trade Organization. They are also members of smaller Asian organizations like the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Wow, Grandma, that was fascinating. Happy to tell you about it.
I really want some fruit right now.
Actually, fruit.
Shut up, William.
Did you meet anybody interesting in China to tell us about? Please say yes so you can shut these two up.
Well, actually...
When in China, I met local farmers who taught me everything I needed to know about how China's agriculture came to be and how it is doing today.
Hello.
Hello, miss. What brings you to this fresh, arable land?
I want to learn about China's agriculture and how it developed.
I can sure fill you in on that. It all started 11,000 years ago. We like to call this China's first agricultural revolution. The first foragers in East Asia were those who lived north of China, and they shifted from hunting and gathering to the cultivation of wild plants.
Wow, 11,000 years ago?
Pioneering foragers actually cultivated millet, and this led to them having an advantage by cultivating pigs. This led them to maintaining a stable food supply, and their ways spread all throughout East China. This greatly encouraged the development of China.
Holy moly mackerel. Those pioneering foragers north of China are very intelligent.
For real.
That we can agree on.
Yes, they encouraged a lot of China's development, and that is why they're so successful today. Anyways, as I was saying...
The farmer I met told me about the Second Agricultural Revolution. It took place around the 1600s to the 1800s.
During the Second Agricultural Revolution, they introduced the use of chemicals to make crop production faster. They would mainly rotate between wheat and barley, and they used these crops to feed livestock. By the end of the Second Agricultural Revolution, population doubled due to all the technological advancements.
That is so fascinating. Can you tell me about the Third Agricultural Revolution?
Of course, the Third Agricultural Revolution happened around the 1900s. They used even more chemicals. China depended greatly on chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and oil. Although this led to China producing more things, it caused a lot of environmental problems.
So that's why there's so much smog in the air. Can we discuss how China runs their area today?
Yes, China is a tropical climate, which means their temperatures are high and they receive a lot of rainfall. The climate is ideal for agriculture and is why they have been so successful. However, China only has 10% of fertile land, while the US has 17%. China's cadastral system is the township and range, but they also use the long lot survey around the Yellow River.
One last question for you guys today.
That's fine. What is it?
Yeah, we love questions.
What does China produce?
China primarily produces produces rice, wheat, potatoes, and other crops. North China greatly depends on wheat, while other provinces around China produce wheat and rice.
They are number one in the world for producing grains like cereal and rice being their cash crop. China produces 22% of cotton, 25.6% fruits, 16.1% beverages, and 22.1% of vegetables.
Thank you for informing me. I bet my kiddos at home will enjoy this.
Wow, China definitely produces a bunch of crops, but Grandma, how does this affect the rest of the world?
That's what I was gonna say.
We know.
Well, China's agriculture has a huge impact on the world. It is the largest food output in the world. Places like Australia, Vietnam, and even the U.S. greatly depend on China's agriculture.
G-Ma,
Yes?
when and where did China start?
Good question.
China is one of the oldest civilizations in history. It began almost 5,000 years ago. One of the first civilizations was a small village called Banpo Village. This village was found in the Yellow River Valley and is thought to have been quite advanced for its age. It consisted of 45 homes sunk in the ground, and it was surrounded by a trench that functioned as both protection and drainage. The village had caves for food storage and pottery. There were many other villages in the Yellow River Valley. As these villages developed, they formed central governments and
Chinese history sounds kinda boring.
But it's not. This is just the beginning of China's rich history. Tell me, have you heard of the Chinese dynasties?
I have. The Chinese dynasties made up most of the history in China. A dynasty is a line of hereditary rulers in a country. Did you know that?
Shut up! Let Grandma tell it!
This is true. A dynasty is a line of rulers that all come from the same family. There were many dynasties in China. The first dynasty in China was the Jia dynasty. This dynasty started in 2070 BCE, which was about 4,000 years ago. This dynasty was founded by Yu the Great. He was the ruler that established the hereditary succession system. He also established a social class system in China. Both systems stayed relevant throughout all of the dynasties in China. This dynasty fell in 1600 BCE.
But Mima, what happened after the Jia dynasty fell? That was still over 3,500 years ago.
Well, there were many more dynasties. Jia was just the first. After the Jia dynasty fell was the Shang dynasty. This dynasty was known for its kind ruler, Tang. During this dynasty, culture flourished. After the Shang was the Zhao dynasty. Many famous philosophers lived during this dynasty, and civilization spread. The chariot was invented during this dynasty, and it would be an important invention during the Warring States period.
Huh? What's that?
Well, in the Warring State period, what?
Shh! Let Grandma tell it.
The Warring States period was a 25-year-long battle between the 9 different states of China to take control of the country away from the Zhao dynasty. After this battle, the Qin dynasty took control of the country. The start of the Qin dynasty initiated the start of China's imperial era. Shi Huangdi was the ruler who established this dynasty. Under this dynasty's rule, the Great Wall of China began to be built.
Wow, I've heard of that.
Of course you have. Everyone has.
Shi Huangdi was a dictator. Under his rule, he had all history and philosophy books destroyed that did not correspond with his dynasty. He restricted freedom of speech and was very controlling.
He didn't sound like he was very popular.
He sure wasn't. He was also very obsessed with the afterlife. Long before he died, he began the construction of his tomb. His tomb consisted of 8,000 terracotta warriors to protect him in the afterlife. Huangdi was said to have died on a mission to find the elixir of immortality. The Qin dynasty fell shortly after his death. After the Qin dynasty was the Han dynasty. The Han dynasty was one of the first dynasties to have written history. They also made many technological advancements, and the first written records of medicine were created during this time.
How many more dynasties were there?
Well, after the Han dynasty, there was the Xin dynasty, Tang dynasty, Song dynasty, Yuan dynasty, Ming dynasty, and then finally the Qing dynasty that fell in 1911. The Qing dynasty was the last dynasty in China.
Wow, what happened after that?
China became a republic. However, this was short-lived. Shortly after the dynasties fell in China, a war began with Japan. China won the war only to start another, this time within itself.
Huh? What does that mean?
A civil war started between the Communist Party and the Kuomintang of China. The war lasted many years and over 12 million people died. Eventually, the Communist Party won. In 1949, they formed the People's Republic of China.
It seems we're up to date about China's history.
Just about. During the first few years of China's communist government, mass starvation, malnutrition, and disease were very common, as the government could not account for China's ever-growing population. Eventually, this problem was fixed. China has not changed much since. The country began to industrialize in the late 1980s. Since then, China has become one of the greatest industrial powers in the world. Shanghai is the largest city in China, with Beijing being the second largest and also China's capital.
Does China follow the rank size rule? I learned about it in school.
No, it does not. Beijing and Shanghai are both mega cities.
Well, I lied. Chinese history sure is interesting.
Indeed.
Grandma, can you tell us about the economy in China?
Of course, kiddo.
Industrialization in China began in the 1860s. The Qing statesmen obtained new tools from beyond China's borders to increase the country's power. In around the 1980s, China's manufacturing was rapidly becoming successful by passing multiple industrial powers, including the US. By 2010, China became the #1 industrial powerhouse in the world. Today, China is the world's largest manufacturing powerhouse, and it produces nearly 50% of the world's major industrialized goods.
China has 3 economic sectors: primary, secondary, and tertiary.
Theoretically, could you tell us the percentages of each sector in China?
The gross domestic product percent in China is 9% for the primary sector, 40.5% for the secondary, 50.5% for the tertiary. The jobs in China have 9.7% of people in agriculture, 43.9% of people in industry, and 46.4% of people in service.
Thank you, Grandma. Can you tell me everything about the Chinese economy?
We can see that their gross national product is 16,700 purchasing power parties, and their gross domestic product is 17.73 trillion US dollars. China experienced a boom in the last 30 years of their GDP. This caused their GDP to grow into the double digits, raising 500 million people out of poverty. China's latest gross national income is $11,880, which means that they are $1,325 below the threshold, which is $13,205 and above. This leaves China to be considered a developing country. Stage 4 in the Rose model means that China is transitioning from just producing products to mostly selling ideas and services. This also leads to many cities in China developing due to industrialization. When looking at Wallerstein's world systems theory, China is considered to be a semi-periphery country. This is because China has both a large area and population. This allows China to have an above-average market.
Okay, so China's economy is stable and really good, right?
China has been experiencing some negatives when it comes to their economy. For example, China's informal economy is about 12.27%, which represents 3,252 billion at the GDP purchasing power party levels as of 2020.
That's a whole lot of numbers.
Yeah, true.
Grandma, I have one more question.
Okay, little one, tell me what it is.
What is the Human Development Index in China?
China's HDI life expectancy for males is 73 years, while their life expectancy for females is 77 years. The expected amount of schooling is 12.9 years, and the average amount that is actually completed is 7.5 years. China's gender gap index as of 2022 is 68% and is somewhat far from us in the US having the gender gap index of 76%.
We stand for equality. How do you know that China is a stable economy, though?
Well, actually, China is part of the 4 Asian tigers.
What? Tigers?
Grandma's still talking about China's economy, nincompoop.
First of all, I don't know what that word is, and I don't really care. I'm going back to sleep.
The 4 Asian tigers are the high-growth economies of Asia. They are Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. The 4 Asian tigers do not only impact China, but they impact the rest of the world. For China, the primary reason for their rise in economy is because of their unique export policies. Hong Kong's approach was implementing neoliberal trading regimes that encourage free trade, while South Korea adopted hybrid regimes that supported their businesses. The four Asian tigers experienced rapid urbanization and industrialization, and that is how they are so successful today.
Thank you, Grandmother. Wow, I learned so much about China today.
Yeah, thank you, Grandmother.
I'm exhausted, but it was pretty cool learning all these facts.
Of course, children. Feel free to come by anytime.
Yeah, I bet William will take you up on that offer.
For real.
Bye, Grandma!
Wait, Grandma, I have another question.